I don't think there are any real divisions between Iran and Oman. The pressure is coming from the United States, which has consistently tried to push countries across the region to do what Washington demands. Iran has said from the very beginning that it would actually prefer to have joint control of the Strait of Hormuz with Oman, because these are the two countries that have territorial waters around the strait. It is not international water in the way some people in Western media continue to describe it. Iran's position has always been clear. We would rather have Oman as our partner, but if Oman is unable to join us, Iran will manage the situation alone. This is fundamentally a security issue for Iran, and the circumstances have changed because of the war. Iran is no longer going to allow the Strait of Hormuz to be used to move weapons, troops, or anything else that could facilitate another assault on the country by its adversaries, particularly the United States and the Israeli regime. That is a completely different situation from before the war. Iran now sees the strait not simply as a passage for ships, but as an issue directly connected to its national security. So there has to be Iranian oversight of what moves through it. At the same time, Iran believes it has every right to impose fees. Countries in the region contributed to the destruction of important Iranian infrastructure and to the killing of thousands of Iranians, including children. Those actions cannot simply be forgotten. There will be repercussions, and the fees are part of Iran's demand that those responsible contribute toward rebuilding the damage caused. Iran has made its position very clear. The fees are not simply a commercial matter. They are connected to what has happened during the war and to the destruction that Iran has suffered. Countries in the region contributed to that destruction, and ordinary Iranians are demanding that there be consequences. The fees would therefore contribute toward rebuilding the infrastructure that was damaged. But there is also a security reason behind Iran's position. The country does not want the Strait of Hormuz to be misused by the United States or the Israeli regime to prepare or carry out another assault. Iran wants to prevent weapon systems, troops, or other military resources from being moved through the strait in a way that could threaten the country. So there are two basic demands coming from ordinary Iranians. First, that those who contributed to the destruction of Iran should contribute to its reconstruction, and second, that the region should not again be used as a platform for attacking Iran. Oman can still work with Iran. The two countries can develop a mechanism for managing the different types of ships and determining what corridors or provisional corridors should look like. There are technical questions that need to be worked out, including which ships can pass, how oversight will operate, and how the fees will be collected. Iran is willing to discuss those practical arrangements. But one thing is not open for discussion. Iran is not going back to the situation that existed before the war. That period is over. The Americans, the Israeli regime, and the regional governments that assisted them should have thought carefully about the consequences before choosing to wage war against the Iranian people. Iran's position is ultimately based on what changed during the war. Before the conflict, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz was different, but once the United States and the Israeli regime used the region to support an assault on Iran, the security calculation changed completely. Iran cannot accept a situation in which the strait can be used to move weapons, military equipment, or troops that could facilitate another attack on the country. That is why Iranian oversight is essential. It is not simply about controlling commercial shipping. It is about preventing the strait from becoming a tool that can be used against Iran's national security. At the same time, Oman has an opportunity to work directly with Iran. Iran has already made clear that it would prefer a joint arrangement rather than acting alone. The two sides can establish practical rules for different categories of ships, determine which corridors can operate, and agree on how oversight and fees will be handled. Those are technical matters and they can be discussed. What cannot be reversed is the fundamental change that has taken place since the war. Iran is not going to return to the old arrangement simply because some governments want things to go back to normal. The war changed the circumstances, and Iran has to protect itself based on that new reality. The United States, Israel, and the governments in the region that supported the assault should have understood that their actions would have consequences. They cannot wage war against Iran and then expect everything to continue exactly as it did before. The period before the war is over. Iran is willing to work with Oman because we have a common interest in maintaining security around the Strait of Hormuz. We can establish a practical mechanism for managing the different categories of ships and determining which vessels can use particular corridors. But any such arrangement will require Iranian oversight. There are technical questions that can be discussed between the two sides. How should the corridors operate? Which ships should be permitted to pass? Under what conditions should fees be collected? And what mechanism should be used to collect them? These are matters that can be negotiated. But the fundamental principle is not a technical question. Iran will not return to the situation that existed before the war. That period has ended. The United States and the Israeli regime, along with the governments in the region that assisted them, should have understood that their actions would produce consequences. You cannot wage war against the Iranian people, destroy important infrastructure, kill civilians, and then expect the same arrangements to remain in place afterward. Iran's position is therefore not simply about closing or controlling a waterway, it is about preventing the region from being used again to threaten Iran. The Strait of Hormuz cannot become a route through which an adversary can move the resources necessary for another assault, while Iran is expected to do nothing. Oman can choose to cooperate with Iran and help establish a joint mechanism. Iran has said it prefers that outcome. But if Oman cannot participate, Iran will act on its own. The choice is ultimately available to Oman, but Iran's responsibility is to protect its own security and prevent another attack. There is no way for Iran to simply return to the conditions that existed before the war. That period is finished. The United States and the Israeli regime, along with the governments in the region that assisted them, should have understood that launching a war against Iran would change the situation permanently. Iran would still prefer cooperation with Oman. There is nothing preventing the two countries from sitting together and developing a practical system for managing the Strait of Hormuz. They can discuss how different ships are handled, what corridors should look like, how Iranian oversight will operate, and how the fees will be collected. These are technical questions, and there is room to work them out. But the fundamental security issue cannot be ignored. Iran will not allow the strait to become a route through which its adversaries can move weapons, troops, or other resources that could be used for another assault. After what happened during the war, that would be unacceptable. The fees are also part of the consequences of what has happened. Infrastructure was destroyed and thousands of Iranians were killed, including children. These are not things that can simply be forgotten once the fighting stops. Iran believes those who contributed to the destruction should help pay for reconstruction. So the choice is actually quite clear. Oman can work with Iran and become its partner in establishing a new mechanism for the strait. Iran would prefer that. But if Oman cannot participate because of American pressure, Iran is prepared to manage the situation alone. What Iran will not do is pretend that nothing happened. The war changed the security environment, changed Iran's calculations, and changed the way the Strait of Hormuz will be managed. The United States, Israel, and their regional partners should have considered those consequences before choosing to wage war against the Iranian people. The reality is that the Strait of Hormuz cannot simply return to the way it was before the war. Iran has learned that its adversaries are willing to use the region to support military operations against the country, and that has changed the way Iran views the strait. If Oman is willing to work with Iran, there is a practical path forward. The two countries can establish a joint mechanism, determine how different ships will be handled, decide which corridors can operate, and agree on how oversight and fees will be managed. Iran has not closed the door to cooperation. In fact, cooperation with Oman is the preferred option. But Iran will not sacrifice its security simply to satisfy Washington or return to an arrangement that existed before the war. The United States and the Israeli regime made their decisions, and those decisions have consequences. For Iran, this is no longer just a question of shipping or commercial access. It is about national security, reconstruction, and making sure the region cannot again be used as a launching point for an attack on the Iranian people. So, the future of the Strait of Hormuz depends on whether the countries involved are willing to recognize that reality. Iran is prepared to cooperate with Oman, but it is equally prepared to act alone if necessary. The old situation is over, and any new arrangement will have to reflect the reality that exists after the war.